She was described in her obituary in the New York Times as a nonstop bulldozer. Billings West High history teacher and also football coach Rob Stanton here with us in studio. Rob, you said, oh yeah, she was a bulldozer. That's for sure. Yeah.
She was a bulldozer, and she was 4'9" of intimidation. So we're at the selection platform, and after a long flight, you kind of untie your shoes, and I forgot to tie my shoes back for a couple days, and we were on the selection platform. She rolls up in her stroller, and she stops and looks at me from head to toe. And she just starts shaking her head. And she goes, Rob, in her accent, you're such a great teacher and a great guy, but you dress like a slob. And later on, I go, well, I just took it. And her son, Alex, is always apologizing. But then later on, I go, why do you mean I dress like a slob? She goes, well, you're a teacher. You should be more professional. And I was like, point taken. So I made sure whenever I was around her to have my shoes tied, just in case she was checking that out.
That's funny. It is, Rocky, you made this point in that special tribute that you put together for Eva Kor. She died on the 4th of July, but she was outside the gates of Auschwitz in Poland. And so I just thought it was, actually, I thought even though it made for a sad 4th of July for you, I thought it was quite fitting that she would pass on the 4th of July, but she died a free woman, and she died continuing to share her story with so many different people. You also, in addition to taking trips to Auschwitz, you've also been to Yad Vashem, the Holocaust museum that's in Jerusalem as well.
My perfect wife, Christy Aaron, always wanted to go to the Holy Land. And I told her, we'll go when we're older. And a couple of years ago, she informed me, we're older, we're going. So we went. And when I got the itinerary from Pastor Steve Petzel at Faith Chapel, I was extremely disappointed that the Jerusalem Holocaust Museum was not on our itinerary. And I said, Steve, I'm not going all the way to Israel and not going to the Holocaust Museum. So they changed the entire itinerary so we could go. And we had the most brilliant tour guide. His name was Ronan. And Ronan took us to the Jerusalem Holocaust Museum, and he stood out next to Schindler's tree. And he told us a couple of amazing stories, a couple of sad stories. He said there was a group from India that planned to go to Bethlehem, but because of conflict, he took them to the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, and they did not know what the Holocaust was, this group from India. Unbelievable. But he shared with us that day that not every Jew suffered in a concentration camp during the Holocaust. He said some hid. There was a family that had a baby girl that hid for 4 years. Every time the Nazi troops came close to their hiding place, they would cover the baby's mouth so she would not cry. This little girl did not speak until she was 12 years old. She grew up, got married, gave birth to one child, a girl. And our tour guide, Ronan, said, I married that little girl.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And that's when I shared with him what my wife and I have done, spreading the word of the Holocaust in Montana.
Yeah, and that I've been to Yad Vashem as well. It's a remarkable Holocaust museum there as well. I didn't make it to the one in D.C. I just, it's kind of one of those things where you're like, and I've heard other people say this too. I just don't know if I can handle it, that whole day, because it is intense. Coach Rob Stanton, Billings West High history teacher, who teaches this genocide class. I was kind of joking with you earlier. I said, okay, so you were the state champ football team coach. Aren't you supposed to be like teaching water polo? Why are you teaching a genocide class? They
don't offer the class. No.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's one thing we preach to our kids. I don't want to be a hypocrite, and we tell our kids to be straight A students and focus on the classroom, and I think coaches should as well.
Yeah. So being, teaching a genocide class at a high school here in Montana, I'm sure it raises up some pretty interesting discussions that you have with young people, because, okay, you start talking about Rwanda. Well, we know with the Rwanda genocide that took place that there were some calls by some to intervene, saying, hey, the U.S. with our military might, could we have intervened and stopped that genocide from happening in this day and age? It must lead to some interesting conversations, because I think right now we're certainly as a country in a more non-intervention period. We've got a president who is less interventionist than previous presidents, probably Democrat and Republican. I'd say younger people are probably less intervention, or they're more likely to be against going to war. But really, at the end of the day, when it comes to genocide, you've got a bad guy with a gun or a lot of guns, and at what point do the good guys with the guns step in and intervene? Probably raises some interesting conversations.
It does, and we discuss that sometimes for days or weeks, and just with the different situations around the world right now. And there's only two ways for genocide to stop. One's the worst way, where everybody's murdered, and the second one is military intervention. So I know in Rwanda, the RPF, with the help of allies, they basically stopped the genocide in Rwanda because the genocide regime was halted. So really, that's the only way you can stop it, and that's why we don't like to use the word genocide. In the Clinton administration in the 90s, they wouldn't use it. They would say things like acts of genocide, and then we're going on a gray area of, but ultimately it comes down to morality, and that's why I think sometimes we need to have a class like this, and just history classes in general, so we can have an understanding of what's going on around the world, at least a little taste of it, so it's just not about us. But citizens of Montana, particularly high school kids, I mean, it's okay to do your thing as well. And like the girls who are just on a trip, I don't expect them to save the world. That they should go on to have college careers and families, but always in the back of your mind, have awareness of what's happening around.
Give us a snapshot of where you see kind of modern day genocide right now. I guess, how would you paint the picture for your kids?
Well, it's still going on, and it should never go on. And it's something that you can't jump on a plane and go over and stop something, but one person can do something, and one person can educate another person, and the next thing you know, you have people talking about something that's horrible that should be stopped. And does money go into it? Do politics go into it? Of course, but sometimes again, they're human beings. It shouldn't be a political issue on some things that are happening to human beings.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, hey, who's going to be at the tip of that spear to go in and stop something like this from happening? And really, it's time and time again, it's been Americans that have been going in to free the oppressed, shall we say. You also do in addition to taking some of your students and others in Montana, I think Miles City sent some kids back to Auschwitz as well on this last trip.
Yep, the last 2 years they've sent kids back as well. So Miles City had 4 kids on the trip this last year, and I think last year they had 4, or maybe 2 or 3. So they've also sent young people on the trip as well. So it's something that, it'd be great if we could have someone in the western side of state that could join us. So who knows, maybe in a couple of years.
Yeah, and you also lead, Rocky was telling me, a survivors trip to Chicago. Tell us about the survivors trip. I kind of started this a couple of years ago. Just some members of our class who are really engaged, and I can tell that they really are soaking everything up that we're talking about. And the Spungen Foundation, Danny Spungen, he lives in Chicago, and they support us, and we'll take anywhere from 6 to 8 kids over to Chicago. And last year we listened to 10 different Holocaust survivors. So we sit down with them, we have dinner with them. The Holocaust survivor will give a speech, anywhere from 20 minutes to 40 minutes, and then we'll sit down and ask questions. So this last year, Danny said the Holocaust survivors now are kind of fighting with each other so they can speak with the group from Montana. They wanted to be the ones that it's my turn to speak. You get to go last year, so it's kind of a little Holocaust survivor squabble, which is kind of cool. Which just tells you the phenomenal students that I'm able to have the pleasure of being around, because they ask just great questions and they're taking notes and they fall in love with them right away. And just got to be therapeutic for those survivors as well. And
they only get 20 minutes. If it's the Holocaust Museum in Chicago, they get 20 minutes to tell their story. That's it. So they're just like so happy they get to tell their whole story to an audience that's very engaging. Yeah,
and Rocky Erickson, I think the key is that we just can't take sharing these stories for granted anymore. Because I talked about growing up in the 80s, was just like, oh yeah, people know about the Holocaust. We can't take it for granted. I know when Eva Kor would come back to Montana, you brought her all the way out to Glendive, and you packed that auditorium out there in Glendive for that, didn't you?
Actually in Glasgow, and Sarah Swanson was instrumental in that trip. But it's so amazing when she came to Billings. I mean, Rob would have her speak to the students one night and then open to the public the next night, and she was tireless. I mean, in Glasgow that night, she signed her book and took pictures with people till 10:30 at night. And I went up to her about 9 o'clock and I said, Eva, I'm tired. I'm going back to the hotel. Have a great night. But she loved that, and she is so engaging, especially with the young people.
I know a lot of you out there, you're hearing Rob Stanton talk about the genocide class that he teaches at West High, and of course also takes a very strong focus on the Holocaust. And you're probably thinking, okay, we do need to continue to teach young people about this, especially as we're seeing polling data out there that's saying so many millennials don't even know what the Holocaust is. They don't know the history of it. So you might be saying, well, okay, how can I make sure that we get some sort of a presentation done in our neck of the woods? Rocky Erickson, I know, you're a great sportscaster, you're a great storyteller. Folks know you across the state for that, but that's why you're kind of volunteering your time to help keep telling these stories. In fact, I think you even talked with Eva about that after she's gone, you want to make sure that her story continues to be told. And
I enjoy, and I think it's really important, taking her story and sharing it with others. And I've had the opportunity over the years since I went back to Auschwitz with Rob and my knowledge with Eva. I have a PowerPoint presentation that I take to schools, and I share her survival story and her forgiveness story with others. And I would love to continue to do that. I've done that throughout the state, and I plan to do it for the rest of my life.
So you'll go speak free of charge if people are listening and they'd like to get a presentation on this. Rocky is ready, and he'll do it free of charge. Her forgiveness story. How was she able to forgive? Rob Stanton.
I think that's just something that she battled with her whole life, and ultimately she didn't. She forgave the Nazis for herself and herself only, and she makes that very clear. It's not, every person that survived the Holocaust that they should also give forgiveness, and a lot of the other survivors didn't like her because of it. But eventually they realized that it's Eva and it's for her, and she made that clear. And it was probably, I think it was in 1985 at Auschwitz when she gave amnesty for the Nazis and forgave him. And she said because of that, her life improved tremendously.
Yeah, basically that by forgiving them, she took away whatever power they might have still had over her.
Exactly.
Because it was kind of eating away at her on the inside. Exactly. So by forgiving them, it actually helped her. It's such a remarkable story. Let's see. There was one other topic I wanted. We hear this term a lot, Coach Stan. Snowflakes. These guys are snowflakes. They can't handle it. And, the left will throw it at the right sometimes for being offended. And the right will throw it at the left for being offended. But really, a lot of us are snowflakes. Well, we complain. We got this problem in life. We got that problem in life. When I talked with the three young ladies who were in your latest tour back at Auschwitz with Eva Kor, they said, because I asked them, well, what's changed since then? They said, whatever problem I thought I had in life is so minuscule compared to what she had to face as a little girl in the Nazi torture camp. And so, but you said this is a familiar theme. Eva Kor, through her message, has saved so many people along the way.
Yeah, she has, and there isn't anything wrong with compassion and empathy. If that's a snowflake, I guess that's a snowflake. But it's just she helps so many people without even know that she helps. So that's why for Rocky to keep on telling the story, people have so much emotional trauma, they have so much baggage, they have so many things that they're fighting inside of themselves. And when they go to Auschwitz or hear a story about Auschwitz of experimentation, and you could watch your documentaries, and then we're complaining because the traffic's bad in Billings, Montana, and that's something maybe we should reconsider about complaining about. But that's human nature as well. But I know a lot of people have been saved by Eva, their lives. So they've changed the way they think. They've just changed everything about them because of her message. Again, this 4'9" bulldozer, if she can do it, maybe I can get over some of the things that have happened to me.
If she could do it as a little girl, yeah, that's true. Well, a couple minutes left. Let's go into the phone lines here. Mike in Bozeman. Mike, what's on your mind? Thanks for calling in.
I would suggest that as part of this education process, that Dinesh D'Souza's book that came out a year ago, Death and Nation, in it he details how the Democrat Party of the post-Civil War era on up into the mid-20th century was associated with totalitarianism, particularly to the Nazis. And the genocidal ideas, some of the genocidal ideas and euthanasia ideas came from what's-her-name that started Planned Parenthood. Her name escapes me right at this second. But just a suggestion, it's an important one. It puts a larger view on the subject, And thanks for your time.
All right. Hey, I appreciate your phone call, Mike. Thanks for calling in. Eugenics, that's certainly something. I mean, now maybe there's genocide, but through other means, through like now they're talking about gene-edited babies and things like that. It's just crazy, some of the stuff we hear about. But yeah, you think about it. When we talk about gene-edited babies, it's crazy to think about how you could see genocide, but through another means or through another name.
Right, and we go into detail with Hitler's T4 program that the Nazis did, and they first started killing their own people, that were racially inferior, that had a mental disability, a handicap. So, those are the first targets of the regime, the Nazi regime. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're out of time today. Coach Stanton, Rocky, thank you so much for joining us. And Rocky, thanks for continuing, and Coach as well. Thanks for continuing to share Eva Kor's story and for bringing so many other Montanans along with you in the journey.
Thank you, Aaron.
All right.